£385,000. £385,000. So you've bitten the bullet and have decided to cross over into the world of investing from the world of just saving your hard-earned cash in the bank account, and you're looking forward to reaping the rewards. Well, first of all, hopefully you've decided to invest into an index fund and invest into it on a regular basis. And if you don't know why you should be doing that in the first place, then I recommend you watch my previous video on the key to investing, which I'll link up here and in the comments below. But now that you've taken this brilliant decision, there's one more thing to do. And that is have an appreciation and understanding for investment fees,
and then minimize them.
There are a few things that you can control in your investment journey. You can control how much you save and invest every month, you can control the length of time you're investing for, and you can control where you put your investments, choosing ones where the cost is lower. Everything else, including the performance of your investments, is completely out of your control. Given that controlling the cost of your investments is something you can control, it shouldn't be ignored. So what are investment fees? Well, there can be a number of different fees charged on your account, but the main two you need to watch out for are the ongoing charge figures, or OCFs, or you may see the TER, the total expense ratio, and platform fees. In this video, I'll be focusing on the ongoing charge figures, but the concepts we'll go through really apply to any sort of fee. So what on earth am I talking about? These OCF fees are a percentage fee charged by the fund provider as a fee to manage and operate the fund. For example, a fund has an OCF of 1.1%. Let's say the fund makes a return of 7% that year, but because of its OCF, it will actually only have returned 5.9%, whereas a cheaper fund with an OCF of 0.1% that also returned 7% that year, after taking that fee into account, will have returned 6.9%. So why do some fees have different funds to others? Well, the type of fund can make a big difference to the fees that they charge. You may have heard of something called active versus passive management, but don't worry at all if you haven't. Really simply, funds you invest into can be actively managed or passively managed. With active management, there are analysts and portfolio managers picking and choosing what companies your money is going to be invested into, and so these fees on funds like this can be quite high in order to compensate them. Whereas with passively managed funds, these normally just copy and track an index, so there's no decisions to be made by anybody, so they are typically much cheaper. I appreciate these numbers can all be a bit confusing, so in typical fashion, I've created some examples in a calculator in a Google Sheet that I've made, and this will be available for you to use and play around with your own numbers, as I'll leave the link to access this in the description below. Here I've created the impact of fees calculator to show you the real impact that these fees have on your portfolio. So let's jump right in. Let's take a look at what difference these fees actually make with an example. All you need to do is fill in these 5 fields. So the first one, yearly investment. This is how much you're investing every year. So let's say £6,000, that's 500 every month. And then the second one, the yearly return. So we'll put this at about 8%. And then we need to put in what the first fund's ongoing charge is going to be. So we'll put in 0.1% here for now. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because that is the ongoing charge figure for the Fidelity Index World Fund, which you've seen me talk about before in previous videos. If we scroll down here on the first page, we can see that the ongoing charge percentage figure is 0.12%, but there is a small discount on that, so overall the ongoing charge is 0.1%. Then we need to put in the fee of the fund that we want to compare to. So let's say for that 1.1%, which is not very uncommon. And lastly, the length of this investment. So let's say 40 years to make the impact of this nice and obvious. So let's input in 40 here. And as you can see, all of these fields in this graph populates. So in this graph, you can see the blue line represents the amount of money that you've added to your investment account over time. This rises perfectly steadily over time as you're investing the same amount every year. The total value of your account, though, is represented by the curved red and yellow lines for both Fund 1 and Fund 2. And in the green box here on the right-hand side, this details the value of those accounts. So, investing £6,000 every year for 40 years, you would invest a total of £240,000. And investing into Fund 1 that had the 0.1% fee, your account by the end of those 40 years would stand at £1.63 million. And with the more expensive fund that charged 1.1%, which remember, we put this same amount of money into over those 40 years and it had the exact same performance, the only difference is the fee that this fund charges. That account would only be worth just under 1.25 million. Now, That's not bad at all, but that means just the ongoing charge figures that the fund provider is charging has cost you over £385,000. And you've lost all of that money in your account just because of that small 1% difference in fees. And you can see how it really does add up over time. You actually lose more because of the difference in fees than you even add to the account over the entire 40 years. And on the far right hand side, you can see this represented in this chart over here, whereby you can see that the total you lost to fees from investing in Fund 2 instead of Fund 1 was 23.6%. That red bar there of the chart, you lose all of that from choosing Fund 2 instead of choosing Fund 1. And this is because just like your investments, the fees compound over time and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And now imagine you had a financial advisor working on your account as well. They might be taking another 1% on top as well. And all of a sudden, over the long term, this eats into your account and your profits a lot. So if we imagine we had a financial advisor in this account charging that 1%, so let's make this 2.1%. You can see there the huge difference. We would lose a total of £674,000 in those fees. And all of a sudden, we're losing 41%. So your account at the end of those 40 years, you're investing the same amount, would be worth about just under $1 million now, versus you invest by yourself without the advisor into a cheap index fund, and your account value would be 1.6 million. You can really start to see the impact that these fees have. So what are the key takeaways from all of this information in this video? You may not even have an investment account or be adding any money to one, or think you'll have any investments for more than a few years, and you might be thinking that this doesn't really affect you. But don't forget your pension. It's likely that the money in your pension is invested into the stock market, and that either you or your employer add money into it every month, and depending on your age, you might have that account for 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years like this example here, or even more. Now, when you join your pension, you'll probably have been put into their default fund, their default investment. And that might be completely fine, but it might be a fund that has a very high ongoing charge figure, like this example. Your provider may have a list of funds that you can invest into within your pension, and some of those may be cheap passively managed index funds, maybe even a global index fund. So you may want to look at your options within your pension, as there may be an alternative investment that you prefer and that's much cheaper. Pensions aside, if you're investing, especially for the long term, a 10-minute decision and change of your investments to lower your fees could give you thousands or even hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars more. So in summary, we've covered what investment fees are and why different funds have different fees. We've gone through the calculator to see how much of a difference small changes in fees can make. Now, as I mentioned earlier, feel free to play around with the calculator with your own numbers, as I'll leave the link in the description below. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, and of course comment below if some of these figures blew your mind or you learned something new, or even if you didn't. And remember, invest smarter, not harder, and I will see you in the next video.